The Mafia boss came to collect the keys to a motel the bank promised was empty. A maid met him with a handwritten list of 18 families still inside. Before she could explain, every electronic lock sealed at once, and demolition lights flooded the parking lot. The residents began pounding on doors that no longer opened. Then a legal notice slid from the office printer. It named the maid as the property owner and held her responsible for whatever happened before sunrise. Claire Morgan read the name twice because terror had made the letters slippery. Her address was there. So was her driver's license number and a digital thumbprint she had given Briarwood Motor Lodge 4 years earlier. When the manager had told her it was required for payroll, the notice said she had acquired the property 6 months ago, diverted federal housing money, housed tenants without permits, and ordered the electronic lockdown, now trapping them in their rooms. At the bottom, beneath a court seal, a paragraph transferred liability for injuries, deaths, and demolition delays to her alone. "I make $12 an hour," she said. "I don't own the mop in my cart." Nico Carbone stood across the office in a charcoal coat, the bank's brass keys still resting in his palm. He had arrived with 2 quiet men and the expression of someone accustomed to rooms becoming honest when he entered them. Claire knew the name. Everyone in the city did. Carbone money financed restaurants, construction companies, a charitable foundation, and, if half the stories were true, graves without headstones. Yet he did not look at her as though the absurd notice settled anything. He looked at the printer, the security monitor, and then the parking lot where a demolition excavator rolled behind a sheriff's cruiser. "How many children?" he asked. 11. 2 babies. "Mrs. Alvarez needs oxygen." Nico closed his hand around the keys. "Show me how to open the doors." The computer rejected Claire's password. The emergency override rejected Nico's new owner code. On the monitors, people struck windows with lamps and chairs. But the glass had been covered with steel security mesh after a burglary the previous winter. Claire grabbed the handwritten list from the counter. Room 6. Alvarez. Oxygen. Room 9. Kenyatta. Infant. Room 14. Pierce. Wheelchair. She had written every name because the motel's tenant file kept erasing itself. 3 times she had restored it from housekeeping notes. 3 times the official system had returned empty. "There's a manual fire release in the laundry room," she said. "Breaking it will open every magnetic lock." One of Nico's men glanced at the red lights washing over the parking lot. "The sheriff will call it tampering." Claire was already moving. "He can call it whatever he wants after Mrs. Alvarez can breathe." She ran through the service corridor, painfully aware that Nico and both men followed. The fire release box was mounted above industrial dryers. A tamper alarm screamed when she drove a detergent scoop through the glass. She pulled the lever. For 1 long second, nothing happened. Then 18 green lights appeared on the panel. Doors flew open along both walkways, and residents spilled into the cold with children, blankets, medication bags, and the stunned faces of people escaping a ship they had never known was sinking. The sheriff entered before the alarm stopped. Captain Warren Cole was broad, silver-haired, and calm in the way of a man who expected his uniform to end every argument. He held a warrant naming Claire Morgan. Behind him, a demolition supervisor checked his watch. "Ms. Morgan," Cole said, "step away from that panel. You are being detained for wire fraud, unlawful tenancy, diversion of housing funds, and reckless endangerment." Claire lifted both hands. Blood from the broken glass ran along her wrist. "You watch those doors lock." We received notice that the owner initiated a security protocol to obstruct a lawful vacancy order. She was standing beside me. Nico said. Cole finally acknowledged him. "Mr. Carbone, the bank informed us you would take possession after clearance. The bank informed me the property was empty. The demolition supervisor approached with a tablet. We have a 6A.M. removal order. Call your men off. That isn't your decision until the deed records." Nico took out his phone and called the fire department. He gave the address. Reported 18 occupied units. An elderly woman on oxygen. Locked exits. And a possible electrical sabotage. He spoke loudly enough that Cole's body camera captured every word. Then he called his attorney and ordered an emergency injunction by placing his own name on both calls. He put himself inside whatever trap had been built for Claire. Cole understood it. His eyes hardened. "You're interfering with a court order." "I'm creating witnesses," Nico replied. Claire led Mrs. Alvarez to the office outlet where her oxygen concentrator could run. The families clustered around her. Some clutching envelopes. They had not been squatters. Every household had paid a portion of rent, while public housing vouchers covered the rest. Utilities had been cut in stages over the last month. The office phone had died. The former manager, Evan Briggs, had promised to contact the housing department, then disappeared 3 weeks ago. His truck was still behind the motel. So were his winter coat and heart medication. He wouldn't leave that medicine, Claire told Nico. And he wouldn't leave his dog. "I've been feeding her in the maintenance shed." The first fire engine arrived. Its presence forced Cole to pull his deputies away from the residence, while paramedics examined Mrs. Alvarez and 2 frightened children. Claire spread 18 carbon receipts across the counter. Each showed a payment to Mercy Harbor Housing, the non-profit assigned to administer emergency shelter vouchers. A pale triangular mark appeared beside every authorization number. Nico stared at the name. "Mercy Harbor receives grants from my foundation." "How much?" Claire asked. "Enough to keep 3 properties operating." "Then why did the power company tell me Briarwood had no funded residents?" His attorney, Daniel Rusk, arrived with a temporary stay displayed on his phone. Cole read it without expression. Demolition would be delayed for 2 hours while a judge reviewed occupancy evidence. 2 hours was not protection. It was a countdown. Claire turned over 1 receipt. The triangular mark resembled the faded symbol on the court notice. She held both beneath the desk lamp. Same printer code. Daniel leaned closer. One is a housing voucher. One supposedly came from county court. Same tiny break in the left edge. Claire said, "The office printer leaves a white scratch when the transfer belt is dirty. Whoever produced these used the same processing equipment, or software designed to stamp the same defect." Nico's attention shifted to her. "How do you know printers?" "Because when management cut staff, I cleaned the office, fixed the copier, changed locks, unclogged drains, and learned every job they didn't want to pay for." A demolition worker slipped through the side gate and climbed into the excavator. Claire saw him on camera. The machine's engine turned over, but the arm did not move. She had disconnected its wireless relay while crossing the lot, using a maintenance code printed inside the utility cabinet. When the supervisor demanded to know what she had done, Claire showed Cole the camera feed of his employee violating the stay. For the first time, the captain looked uncertain. "The old luggage room," Claire said to Nico. Evan kept asking me if the basement ever flooded. The motel hasn't accepted luggage in 15 years. They descended beneath the office while Daniel remained upstairs with the residents. Damp, concrete walls, enclosed rusted shelves, and a row of cabinets that should have been empty. Claire's master key failed. Nico's man, Thomas Vale, opened the first cabinet with a slim steel tool. Inside were leases, intake forms, photographs, and carbon receipts from 4 other foreclosed motels. Every file described families placed temporarily, erased from official records, then blamed for trespassing when the property was demolished or sold. The last cabinet bore a clean label, owner transfer. Claire found a corporation registered in her name, a deed bearing her forged signature, copies of her employment records, and a purchase profile on Nico. The profile catalogued his companies, arrests that had never produced convictions, rumored associates, and the likelihood that law enforcement would attribute violence or obstruction to him. A sentence had been highlighted. Carbone acquisition provides credible criminal explanation for occupant loss. Claire's stomach tightened. They didn't choose me because I was convenient. They chose someone nobody would believe. Nico read the sentence again. And they chose me because everybody would believe the worst. Behind the files was a monitor connected to a hidden network line. When Claire touched the keyboard, a map appeared. Briarwood glowed amber. 6 other temporary housing sites were green. 1 turned red while they watched. A camera window opened on another aging motel, where demolition lights ignited across a parking lot. A maid in a blue uniform stood in an office holding a legal notice identical to Claire's. Across the bottom of the screen, a message appeared. Briarwood, delay confirmed. Advance the next site. Claire reached for the network cable. Nico stopped her hand an inch before she pulled it. If we disconnect, they know we found this room. They already know Briarwood was delayed. They don't know why. He pointed to the second motel's address. Can you send them something without changing this screen? Claire studied the old terminal. Housekeeping software linked all 7 properties. Managers used it to request linens, report repairs, and mark rooms cleaned. Someone had hidden the surveillance network beneath it. Assuming no maid would understand the difference, Claire opened a maintenance ticket for the second property, the Fairfield Lodge, and typed 4 words into the notes field. Break fire. Release now. The camera showed the maid glance at her desk. She read the message, looked up at the locked room indicators, and ran. Nico called the city fire chief directly. Daniel called the judge handling Briarwood's stay. Claire called Fairfield's office. But the line routed to a recorded message from Mercy Harbor Housing. On screen, the maid smashed the emergency box. Doors opened as the excavator crossed the curb. Families rushed out. The machine stopped only when a woman pushed a stroller into the center of the lot and refused to move. They're doing it in daylight now, Claire whispered. Because we cost them 2 hours, Nico said, which means whatever they're destroying has a deadline. Claire searched the hidden system. Each property page contained 3 ledgers residents assigned, voucher payments received, and vacancy certifications submitted to banks. At Briarwood, the resident list showed 0, while the payment ledger showed 42 people. The vacancy certificate had been signed by Grant Hale, Executive Director of Mercy Harbor Housing and former Deputy Commissioner of the City Housing Department. Claire recognized him from framed photographs in the office. He had visited twice, shaking hands with donors while she replaced towels upstairs. The second property's payment ledger began deleting itself line by line. Photograph everything, Claire said. Tomas used his phone while Claire opened records faster than the deletion script could erase them. Nico called Grant Hale. He put the phone on speaker. Hale answered warmly. Nico, I heard there was confusion at Briarwood. 18 families are confusion. There was a small pause. Unverified occupants. We terminated the placement contract months ago. Your foundation should have received the reconciliation report. The report says they were relocated. I'm looking at them. Then someone allowed them back in. I understand a staff member fraudulently claimed ownership. Claire leaned toward the phone. You used my employment file to create that claim. Hale's voice remained gentle. Ms. Morgan, I advise you to cooperate with Captain Cole. Mr. Carbone cannot protect you from federal charges. Can you protect yourself from 42 people who know where they slept last night? The hidden monitor went black. Emergency lights clicked on in the basement. Upstairs. Someone shouted. Nico opened the door. But a steel fire shutter dropped across the stairwell. Water began pushing under the far wall, not rainwater, but a hard, pressurized stream from a ruptured main. Claire heard the building's pumps engage and understood the deadline. They're flooding the basement. The water reached her shoes. Tomas tried to lift the shutter, but its motor held it against the floor. Nico drew a pistol from beneath his coat. Claire caught his wrist before he fired into the mechanism. That box is beside a gas line. She seized a pipe wrench and ran to the opposite wall. Help me turn this. The blue valve controlled the motel's laundry supply. The red valve beside it controlled the fire reserve. Neither should have fed the basement. Yet both meters spun. Someone had reversed the labels during a renovation. Claire shut the unlabeled return line, and the water slowed. Nico and Tomas forced the shutter high enough to slide the document boxes underneath. Claire pushed the last carton through as water climbed to her knees. Then the overhead lights sparked, and the darkness became absolute. Nico found her arm. Leave the cabinet. Evan's file might be in it. A dead witness helps no one. He pulled her toward the gap. They emerged into the office, soaked and carrying 6 boxes. Captain Cole stood over Daniel, who had been handcuffed to a chair. 2 deputies had taken the residents' receipts from the counter. The demolition supervisor claimed the burst pipe made Briarwood structurally unsafe and required immediate evacuation. Convenient, Claire said. Cole pointed at the boxes. Set those down. They are evidence in an active fraud investigation. Then log them on camera. Daniel said. Every page, every seal, every person who touches them. Cole's body camera was dark. Nico noticed, before anyone else spoke. Turn it on. Equipment failure. One of the residents. 15-year-old Maya Kenyatta. Raised her phone from behind her mother's shoulder. Mine works. Around her. Other phones appeared. Claire had spent 4 years being overlooked because people saw her uniform and her body before they saw her. Cole made the same mistake with the residents. He saw frightened families, not 20 independent cameras broadcasting to relatives, neighborhood groups, and local reporters. Claire took one wet file from a box and held it toward Maya's lens. This is an original lease from the Parkcrest Inn. It lists 7 families Mercy Harbor said were relocated before that building burned. Do not stop recording. Cole ordered his deputies to seize the phones. Nico's 2 men stepped between them and the families but kept their hands visible. The confrontation lasted 6 seconds. Then Fire Chief Elena Ruiz entered with 3 inspectors and announced that no one would remove occupants or evidence until her department determined why an occupied building's locks and water system had been remotely manipulated. Cole's authority did not vanish. It became visible as a choice. He released Daniel, retreated to the parking lot, and called someone from inside his cruiser. Chief Ruse gave Claire a thermal blanket. A federal housing auditor is on her way. Her name is Lena Park. Until she arrives. These boxes stay with my fire marshal. Cole will find a warrant, Claire said. Probably. Nico looked toward the residents, gathered in the cold. Then we create copies he cannot collect. Nico opened a nearby hotel ballroom and sent vans. Food. And scanners. Claire refused to leave until fire officials documented every Briarwood resident and each family photographed its receipts. Fairfield did the same. Copies went to law firms, reporters, the fire department, and the residents. At the hotel, Nico put every family in a room under its own name. Claire knew money could solve one night. The question was whether he would expose the system that had made his money useful to Hale. Lena Park, a federal emergency housing inspector, arrived carrying a canvas bag and no visible patience. 3 earlier complaints about Mercy Harbor had died when their supporting records disappeared. Claire showed her the copied ledgers, the shell company, and the profile, selecting Nico as a criminal explanation. Lena did not congratulate them. She asked where the server was, who had original custody, and whether Claire had accessed protected tenant data without authorization. I used my employee password, Claire said, at a property legally recorded in your name. A forged name. Forgery must be proved. Right now, Hale can say you created those screens. Carbone supplied the documents, and the residents were paid to support a defense against fraud charges. Nico's jaw tightened. 42 people. Juries have heard uglier stories about you. Lena placed the purchase profile on the table. That is why this trap works. She needed an unbroken chain from federal payment to Mercy Harbor and onward to false vacancy orders. Copies from a compromised motel proved suspicion, not guilt. The central processor was Haven Ledger Services, which handled vouchers, utility requests, electronic locks, and court notices. Its triangular logo matched Claire's documents. Daniel found that Haven's city contract had been approved while Hale was deputy housing commissioner. Captain Cole's wife sat on its compliance board. So we take their server, Nico said. Lena looked directly at him. If you mean steal it, you will destroy my case and confirm theirs. How long for a warrant? With certified originals and probable cause, hours. Without them, days. By then every server will be clean. Claire thought of Evan Briggs's coat hanging behind the office door. He found the originals. That's why he disappeared. She searched the cabinet index. One code repeated beside every demolished site, EB19. Evan used different initials. Claire turned the scan upside down and read a room number 61B. Briarwood had no room, 61. But its boiler plans showed chamber B16 beneath the courtyard. There's another room, she said. Claire drew the plumbing layout from memory, revealing a dry entrance through the maintenance shed. Lena obtained an inspection order. Nico was excluded as an interested buyer. Claire entered as both facilities employee and recorded owner. For once, the identity chosen to destroy her opened a door beneath the maintenance shed. She and Lena found a narrow chamber warmed by the boiler. Evan's dog scratched at the wall until Claire removed a loose panel. Behind it were 3 flash drives, a paper ledger wrapped in plastic, and a motel Bible with dates written beside verses. The ledger recorded voucher authorization numbers, actuel, occupant, false relocation sites, and payments to Haven Ledger. The last page contained a sentence in Evan's cramped handwriting. If I disappear, find room 312 at St. Cor. Vincent's under the name Edward Brooks. Nico waited outside. Vincent's, while Claire and Lena found Evan under the alias, suffering a fractured jaw and 2 broken ribs. He had been admitted as a transient and transferred twice after unidentified callers asked about him. When Claire stepped into his room, his eyes filled. The dog safe. The family's safe tonight. He tried to sit up. Not tomorrow. Hale has a schedule. Demolitions aren't just land deals. He bills relocation for each family, then moves the same family on paper through 4 properties. Every move creates a new fee. When auditors ask to meet them, he declares the last building empty and destroys it. The families are real only when money is collected. After that, they become trespassers. Why use staff as owners? Lena asked. Haven buys employment files from its background check vendor. Clean record. Low income. No lawyer. The deed appears before demolition. Liability follows the deed. By the time the worker proves forgery, the property and records are gone. Evan looked at Claire. I found your transfer packet. I tried to delete it. Cole came that night. Captain Cole did this to you. He watched. 2 Haven security men did the work. Evan had hidden the ledger before visiting the housing department. Hale's office called him unstable. Cole transported him for evaluation, then released him through a side exit to Haven's men. Lena photographed his injuries and arranged federal protection. His testimony and ledger were enough to request warrants. They were not enough to stop Hale's immediate countermove. Hospital news showed Nico beside footage from Briarwood. Hale announced that a Mafia organization had installed fraudulent tenants and used a vulnerable employee to steal federal funds. Cole displayed 3 pistols supposedly found in Briarwood's basement. Claire recognized the basement cabinet beneath them. The guns had not been there when she opened it. Hale publicly offered Claire immunity and housing if she turned against Nico. The offer reached her phone 30 seconds later. He wants you alone, Nico said, when Claire returned to the car. He wants me believable. If I stand beside you, I'm your employee. If I accuse you, I'm his victim. You are not going near him. Claire closed the car door but did not sit. You don't get to order me. Hale breaks people and files them under another name. And you scare people until they agree. Different method. Same assumption. The words landed harder than a shout. Nico dismissed his driver and moved away from the hospital entrance, giving her space. What do you need? The truth about your foundation. You have the grants. I have the clean version. Hale built this knowing your name would keep questions away. Either he guessed, or you gave him a reason. For the first time that morning, Nico looked tired. Mercy Harbor Housing had begun as a way to convert seized neighborhood properties into shelters. Nico's construction companies renovated them. His foundation paid Mercy Harbor to select residents and certify costs. Inflated invoices moved money back through subcontractors controlled by his associates. Nico claimed he had never approved stolen housing vouchers, but he had benefited from silence, weak oversight, and contracts awarded through fear. How much? Claire asked. Across 6 years, $11 million in construction revenue. Maybe 3 in profit. And if Lena opens those books, she finds tax crimes. Bead manipulation. Payments to men who do not write receipts. And enough probable cause to dismantle half my organization. Hale knows you'll protect it. Yes. Then that's his last locked door. Nico looked through the glass at Evan's guarded room. If I open it, people who trust me go to prison. People who trusted Mercy Harbor lost their homes. Evan nearly died. 18 families were supposed to disappear before sunrise. Claire held up Hale's offer. You can spend money on hotel rooms and call yourself merciful. Or you can make sure your name never shelters this again. Nico was silent long enough that Claire thought he would leave. Then he called Daniel. Bring Lena every ledger from the Foundation and Carbone Restoration. No summaries. No redactions. Tell my accountants that anyone who deletes a file becomes the first name I give the prosecutor. Daniel's answer was audible through the phone. That could end everything. It should end what it paid for. Nico hung up and faced Claire. Now, tell Hale. You accept his offer. Claire did. She demanded a face-to-face meeting at Haven Ledger, claiming Nico had threatened her and that she possessed the only original list linking him to the tenants. Hale agreed too quickly. Lena wanted a listening device, a surveillance team, and time to obtain a warrant. Claire wanted the residents moved from Nico's hotel first, because Hale would target them the moment he believed she had changed sides. The city denied emergency placements. Claire refused another Carbone property because it would support Hale's story. The families chose relatives, a church, or a union hall, and fire officials documented each move so no one could erase them again. Maya organized a message group and legal contact number. At dusk, Claire changed out of her wet uniform and put on the plain black dress she wore to funerals. She carried her handwritten list in her coat pocket. Nico waited outside Haven Ledger's glass headquarters, across a narrow street lined with bare trees. If the signal fails, I come in, he said. If the signal fails, Lena comes in with a warrant. She does not have one yet. Then you wait. Nico studied the building. You're asking a difficult thing of a man whose profession is not waiting. Try a new profession for 10 minutes. He almost smiled. It disappeared when a black van turned the corner. Captain Cole stepped out and entered Haven Ledger through a private door. Claire touched the transmitter beneath her collar. Now we know where he stands. We knew. Now a federal microphone knows. She crossed the street, alone. The lobby of Haven Ledger looked less like the center of a conspiracy than a dental clinic. White walls. Quiet music. Bowls of wrapped candy. The pale triangle was etched into the glass behind reception. A security guard asked Claire to place her phone. Bag. And coat in a locker. He passed a scanner over her twice, pausing at the transmitter beneath her collar. Medical monitor, Claire said. He removed it anyway. The signal in Lena's van went silent. Claire was taken to a conference room where Grant Hale waited beside Captain Cole and a camera on a tripod. Hale was 50. Silver at the temples, with the cultivated warmth of a man photographed beside donated toys. He poured tea for Claire and told the guard to bring a wider chair. The gesture was so precisely insulting that she understood it had been rehearsed. You have been exploited, Hale said. Mr. Carbone selected you because he assumed a working woman would have no resources to challenge him. That sounds like something you understand. Cole pushed over an immunity agreement requiring Claire to blame Nico for the false records and planted files. In exchange, Mercy Harbor offered an apartment and $30,000. At one of the places on your green map, she asked. Hale's smile held. But Cole moved closer. Claire laid her handwritten list on the table. Nico gave me the Foundation ledger. It shows every family he paid me to invent. Hale did not reach for it. You brought an original, the only one matching rooms to payments. But I want a new identity and proof you can erase my deed before I hand it over. Cole scoffed. But Hale's interest sharpened. You have learned quickly. I learned when a court notice came out of my own printer. Hale gestured toward the camera. Record your statement. Then we will correct your ownership file. At the camera, Claire stopped at the phrase, 18 fictitious households. That won't hold, she said. Why? The families are on video, and their vouchers are in the federal system. Carbone submitted them through compromised credentials. Hale said, Whose? The statement explains it. The next paragraph blamed Evan for stealing her identity. Evan is alive. Cole placed both hands on the table. Sign the agreement. You told Haven's men where to find him. Captain, if he testifies, this statement falls apart. Hale looked at Cole, and that glance gave Claire more than an answer. Cole had not told him Evan had been found. Outside, Nico watched the building's upper windows from Lena's van. The transmitter was dead. The warrant remained unsigned, and every instinct that had kept him alive urged him through the front door. Lena blocked the exit. If you cross that street armed, Hale wins even if Claire walks out, she said. Daniel arrived carrying 2 encrypted drives and signed consent forms. Nico had disclosed the Foundation's illegal contracting arrangements and voluntarily authorized federal access to its accounts. Lena transmitted the material to the judge with Evan's ledger and the fire chief's report. Still, they waited. Inside, Hale turned off the camera. The kind public servant vanished with the red light. Evan Briggs is a confused addict with no legal identity at St. Vincent's, he said. His testimony will be discredited. Carbone's money will make every paper you found suspect. Your best outcome is the one I am offering. Claire looked at the dark lens. And the 18 families, they will be reassessed at another motel. If eligible, then billed 4 times and erased. Cole grabbed the list. But Claire had written only names and room numbers. There were no payment codes. Hale finally lost his smile. Where is Carbone's ledger? Already with a federal auditor. Cole struck the table hard enough to spill the tea. Then why are you here? To learn what you were afraid of. Hale spoke quietly to the guard. The man locked the door. Claire studied the room as she had studied every motel room. She cleaned vents. Hingus. Stain. Things moved since the last guest. A narrow cabinet beside the teleprompter contained blank ownership notices. The printer beneath it was the same commercial model as Briarwood's, and the pale triangle on its calibration page carried the identical broken edge. More important, a status panel showed 7 active property connections. 6 were yellow. Briarwood pulsed red beside the words, Local, Archive pending destruction. The basement flood had not destroyed the archive. It had triggered a contingency. The excavator was never meant merely to clear the building. Its operator needed to crush the boiler chamber before investigators found what Evan had hidden there or what remained deeper inside. Claire rose. I need a bathroom. Cole blocked her. Sit. She shoved the tea across the table. It spilled into the power strip beneath the camera. Sparks snapped. The lights failed, and the building's alarm began a calm, recorded evacuation message. The lock on the conference room door released exactly as Briarwood's should have. Claire ran into the corridor. Employees emerged from cubicles. She pulled the fire alarm. Adding a mechanical bell, the security system could not silence. Then followed green exit signs toward the stairwell. Cole caught her at the landing. He twisted her arm behind her back and pressed her against the wall. "You should have taken the apartment," he said. Claire drove her heel down on his foot and threw her weight backward. He lost balance for only a second. But a second was enough to wrench free. She did not run toward the lobby. She ran down to the service level, where network lines and building controls converged. Haven's operations room had glass walls and no paper. 6 technicians were executing remote deletions under Hale's instructions. Screens displayed housing accounts vanishing by batches, while another panel showed Briarwood's demolition equipment online. Claire recognized the same coded relay she had disabled that morning. An operator entered a fresh override, and the excavator's engine status turned green. She pulled the list from Cole's hand during the struggle. Now she slapped it onto a scanner and pressed "Send all." The machine rejected outside addresses, but offered internal departments. Claire chose compliance, legal, billing, human resources, and every property office. Then she turned the paper over and wrote across the back, "These people exist." She scanned it again. The message appeared on hundreds of Haven screens. It did not save evidence, but it made every employee a witness to what was being erased. "Stop the deletion," Claire told the technicians. "A federal warrant is coming." No one moved. "You can be witnesses or defendants. Decide before Hale comes through that door." A young technician lifted his hands from the keyboard. A woman beside him removed a portable drive and set it on the desk. 2 others continued working. Claire reached the property control console and revoked the demolition override. But the command required executive authentication. Hale entered the room with Cole and 2 guards. "You have no idea what you are touching," Hale said. "A machine that locks poor people in rooms and calls them empty. A system that moves thousands of families through emergency housing. Imperfectly. Yes, if you destroy it, every payment stops. You already stopped paying for the rooms. You kept paying yourselves." Hale nodded to the technician, still deleting files. "Finish." The young technician who had stopped working stepped away from his console. "Sir, she's right about a warrant. We should preserve the system." Cole pulled his service weapon. The room froze. "No one is under arrest," Claire said. "So why is your gun out?" Hale's eyes moved to the ceiling cameras. "Put it away." Warren. Cole did not. His career, his wife's board payments, and the assault on Evan were contained in the shrinking data around them. He ordered Claire to enter the executive code from Hale's badge and authorize Briarwood's demolition. Claire understood then that Hale had preserved distance from the physical crimes. Cole had become the man who ensured accidents happened. "You locked those doors," she said. "The system did. You sent the men who broke Evan's jaw. He resisted a lawful transport. And now you're pointing a gun at an unarmed maid while cameras record you." Cole glanced upward. Hale used the instant to step away from him. Outside, Lena's phone chimed. The warrant had been signed. Federal agents crossed the street while fire crews responding to Claire's alarm blocked Haven's loading dock. Nico stayed in the van because Lena had ordered him to, and because Claire had asked him to learn how. Agents announced themselves in the lobby. Cole seized Claire around the neck and pulled her behind the control desk. He demanded a clear path to the garage. Hale raised both hands and declared that the captain was acting alone. "He'll bury you before you reach the door," Claire told Cole. "Shut up. Look at him." Hale would not meet Cole's eyes. The partnership had already ended. Cole's weapon lowered a fraction. Claire drove her elbow into his ribs and dropped beneath the desk. The young technician tackled Cole's gun arm. A shot shattered a monitor, but no one was hit. Federal agents entered and forced Cole to the floor. Hale tried to delete something from his phone. Lena took it from his hand and read the screen, a command authorizing immediate structural removal at Briarwood. The excavator had already begun to move. On the surviving control panel, Claire saw its arm swing toward the maintenance shed. She needed Hale's executive code. He refused. Lena warned him that destruction after service of a federal warrant would add obstruction charges. He smiled and said the machinery had been pre-programmed by Carbone contractors. Claire looked at the status log. No. Your system records biometric authorization. It accepted your right thumbprint 31 seconds ago. The technician confirmed it. The log also showed Hale had authorized the morning lockdown and Cole had approved the false emergency order. Hale's confidence finally broke. Still, he would not unlock the controls. Claire did not need him. Housekeeping terminals could create emergency maintenance tickets. The central software prioritized fire, gas, and elevator faults above demolition commands. She opened all 7 properties, marked every occupied unit with its actual resident count, and issued a gas leak evacuation lockout for Briarwood's equipment zone. The system demanded the name of an on-site verifier. Claire typed her own, the fraudulent owner. The ignored Maid. The one identity Haven had given complete property access because it expected her never to discover it. The excavator stopped with its bucket suspended over the shed. Preserve that log, Lena ordered. Technicians began copying servers under agent supervision. Paper authorization rolls were found behind a false wall in Haven's print room. They bore original thumbprints, vacancy certificates, ownership transfers, and routing instructions for 9 years of demolitions. The trail did not end with Hale. It reached bank officers who accelerated foreclosures, judges' clerks who backdated notices, utility managers who cut power to occupied buildings, and subcontractors who billed for relocation buses that never arrived. Nico entered only after Lena declared the building secure. Claire was sitting on the floor outside the operations room while a medic examined bruises on her neck. His gaze went to the marks, then to Cole in handcuffs. The old Nico, the one Hale had profiled, rose visibly behind his eyes. Claire said, "Evidence, not revenge." He looked at Cole for another second. Evidence lasts longer. Hale passed them in restraints. "You think this makes you clean?" "Carbone." "No," Nico said. "That is why they have my books." Halle stared at him, unable to understand a man volunteering the weapon that could ruin him. His whole scheme had depended on predictable selfishness, a bank protecting its sale, officials protecting contracts, Nico protecting his empire, Claire protecting only her job. The trap failed because the people inside it accepted costs Hale could not imagine them choosing. By midnight, Briarwood's basement was a federal evidence site. Engineers found a second concealed chamber beyond Evans' wall. It held original intake photographs and personal property from hundreds of families' birth certificates, school records, medical cards, wedding albums, items taken during supposed relocations and retained so victims could not prove where they had lived. Claire recognized a red child's backpack from a family evicted 2 years earlier. In its front pocket was a note from a mother to a teacher explaining that her son might be tired because they were moving again. Claire sat on the boiler room step and wept for people whose names she had never known. Nico sat beside her without touching her. "We can find them. Some will have lost custody. Some will have records. Some won't trust anyone who calls. Then we keep calling. You may be calling from prison. Then Daniel will be expensive for a useful reason." She laughed once despite herself. It did not erase the day. It made room to survive it. The first arrests reached beyond Haven Ledger within 48 hours. Captain Cole was charged with assault, evidence tampering, obstruction, and conspiracy to deprive tenants of their rights. Grant Hale faced fraud, identity theft, witness intimidation, and theft of federal housing funds. 3 bank officers and 2 city contractors were indicted later. After Haven's paper rolls proved that they had certified occupied buildings as vacant, Cole's wife resigned from the compliance board before agents searched their home. The payments to her consulting company had already been copied. Claire's charges were dismissed in open court. Lena insisted on more than a quiet withdrawal. A federal judge declared the Briarwood deed fraudulent, ordered every record in Claire's shell company preserved, and read into the record that Claire had released trapped residents while public officials tried to hide them. The statement could not return the week she spent seeing her own name beside the word criminal, but it meant no future landlord or employer could pretend the accusation remained unresolved. Nico's consequences took longer. He pleaded guilty to bid manipulation and tax charges arising from the books he surrendered. His construction companies lost city contracts. The court placed his foundation under independent control and ordered $15 million in assets into a restitution fund. Men who had once toasted his loyalty called him a traitor for giving prosecutors records that implicated them. Nico did not answer them. He sold his largest house, dismissed half his security, and began serving a sentence that allowed daytime work at a monitored restitution office. Mercy did not erase responsibility. It required him to stop purchasing exemptions from it. The Briarwood families were not pushed into another temporary motel. With federal money recovered from frozen Haven accounts, the city repaired the plumbing, removed the lock system, and transferred the property to a resident-controlled housing trust. Each household received a lease naming every person who lived there. Mrs. Alvarez chaired the first safety committee. Maya Kenyatta designed a public dashboard showing occupancy, voucher payments, utility status, and inspection dates. No administrator could mark a room empty without the resident receiving a notice and an independent reviewer seeing the change. Claire refused 3 television offers and accepted 1 job from Lena, director of a new tenant verification team staffed largely by former motel workers, maids, maintenance workers, night clerks, and desk agents knew when beds had been slept in, when medicine remained in refrigerators, and when a supposedly vacant building consumed hot water at 6 every morning. Their handwritten observations became admissible audit records instead of disposable housekeeping notes. Over the next year, the team found 286 people falsely recorded as relocated. Some had moved among shelters. Some were sleeping in cars. 11 parents used the restored records to reopen custody or benefits cases. Personal documents from the boiler chamber were returned 1 family at a time, with no cameras present unless the family requested them. Evan recovered, reunited with his dog, and testified against Hale. He later managed Briarwood for the resident trust, though Claire made him promise never again to investigate a basement alone. Fairfield Lodge and 4 other properties were also transferred to non-profit trusts with independent audits. The 7th site had been demolished months earlier, but its residents were traced through school enrollment and clinic records. Haven had counted some families as relocated as many as 6 times. Restitution was calculated for every false move, every lost deposit, and every night a household had paid for a room the government was already funding. On the anniversary of the lockdown, Claire stood in Briarwood's office beside a new keyboard. There were no master electronic controls. Each family held its own physical key, and the fire release was inspected under Mrs. Alvarez' supervision. The old printer sat in an evidence warehouse. In its place was a plain machine that printed 2 copies of every notice, one for the office and one delivered by hand. Nico arrived without an entourage, wearing an ankle monitor beneath his trousers. He had received permission to attend the trust meeting because the restitution office was presenting its quarterly report. He waited at the counter until Claire finished helping a father add his newborn daughter to room 22's lease. "The book's balance," he said, handing her the report. "They should. You still make that sound like a threat. It saves time." He looked through the window at children, chalking names and flowers across the walkway. "Daniel says the trust wants to rename the building. The residents voted to keep Briarwood. They said a place shouldn't lose its name because criminals used it." Nico nodded. He understood the part. She did not say, neither should a person. Their relationship had grown in supervised hours and inconvenient truth. He never asked her to excuse what he had done. She never pretended his sacrifice made him harmless. They drank coffee after restitution meetings, argued over repair bids, and once spent an entire Saturday returning school records to a grandmother in Ohio. Whatever existed between them remained smaller than the work and stronger because neither tried to use it as proof of redemption. Before Nico left, Claire gave him a copy of the first transparent audit. On its final page were 18 signatures from the original Briarwood households. Not one was a thumbprint taken from an employment file. Not one had been copied, hidden, or assigned by someone else. "You kept the list?" he asked. Claire opened the drawer where her handwritten page lay inside a clear sleeve. The paper was wrinkled from basement water, and Cole's grip had torn one corner. But every name remained readable. "I don't need it to prove they exist anymore," she said. "I keep it to remember why the system has to." Outside, 18 families turned their own keys in 18 doors. No light changed on a secret screen. No official marked the rooms vacant. The locks opened. The names remained. And morning came without anyone disappearing.